The Scarlet Letter. Chapter 9, The Leech. Roger Chillingworth, Hester's real husband, is described in more detail. After arriving at Boston and finding his wife in utter disgrace upon the pillory, he chooses to stay and live in the city. His uncommon intelligence and skill as a physician soon make him quite popular. Dimmesdale's poor health and Chillingworth's interest in the young man combine to make many of the church officials try to get them to live together. Dimmesdale declines at first, saying, "I need no medicine." Dimmesdale finally gets into the permanent habit of placing his hand over his heart in pain, and he agrees to meet with Chillingworth. The meeting immediately leads to the two men moving in together. The narrator comments that a man burdened with a secret should especially avoid the intimacy of his physician. The townspeople are for the most part thrilled with the way the relationship between the two men is working out. However, a few townspeople have more innate intuition and are skeptical of the physician's true motives. They sense that Chillingworth has undergone a profound change since arriving in Boston, going from a genial old man to an ugly and evil person. Thus, it grew to be a widely diffused opinion that the relevant Arthur Dimmesdale was haunted either by Satan himself, or Satan's emissary, in the guise of old Roger Chillingworth. Chapter 10, The Leech and His Patient. Chillingworth realizes that Dimmesdale is hiding some dark secret. He therefore expends a great deal of time and energy to make Dimmesdale reveal what is troubling him. Dimmesdale fails to realize that Chillingworth is in fact his enemy. He is so terrified of everyone in the town finding out his secret that he is blind to any enemy within his own home. Chillingworth engages the minister in a conversation about why men keep secrets in their hearts rather than revealing them immediately. Dimmesdale clutches his breast and struggles to avoid directly answering the questions Chillingworth poses. The two men are interrupted by Pearl and Hester walking through the cemetery outside. Pearl is jumping from gravestone to gravestone, and she finally starts dancing upon a large, flat stone. When Hester tries to make her stop, she takes several birds and arranges them on the Scarlet Letter, to which they stick. Chillingworth observes that Pearl has no discoverable principle of being since she disregards all human ordinances and opinions. Dimmesdale then remarks that Pearl embodies the freedom of a broken law. When Pearl sees the two men, she hurls one of her birds at Dimmesdale, who recoils in fear. Pearl then shouts to her mother that they should leave, or the black man who has already gotten hold of Dimmesdale will catch them. Chillingworth then tells Dimmesdale that as his physician he cannot cure him, his ailment seems to come from his spiritual side. Chillingworth demands to be told what sort of secret Dimmesdale is hiding. The minister, upset by this, passionately cries out, "No!" not to the not to an earthly physician, and leaves the room. Soon after, Dimmesdale falls asleep while reading. Chillingworth takes the opportunity to place his hand over Dimmesdale's heart and then leaves before the minister can awaken. He is incredibly full of joy and wonderment after having felt Dimmesdale's heart. The narrator tells us that he acted how Satan comports himself when a precious human soul is lost to heaven and won into his kingdom. Chapter 11, The Interior of a Heart. Chillingworth, having figured out that Mr. Dimmesdale is the true father of Pearl, goes on a subtle campaign to hurt the minister as much as possible. Revenge consumes him to the point that he can only focus on causing the other man pain. Dimmesdale never figures out that his strongest enemy is the man whom he considers his only friend and physician. Mr. Dimmesdale is so overwhelmed with shame and remorse that he has started to become famous for his sermons. His ability as a speaker is enhanced by the fact that he feels far more sinful than many in his audience. He has even tried to tell his congregation about the sin he committed with Hester Prynne, but always in such a way that they think he is being modest. This causes Dimmesdale even more pain, for he believes that he is also lying to his people. Dimmesdale also has become a masochist, and he uses chains and whips to beat himself in his closet. In addition, he undertakes extremely long fasts, refusing to eat or drink as penance. This fasting causes him to have hallucinations in which he sees his parents, friends, and even Pearl and Hester. One night he decides that there might be a way for him to overcome his anguish, and he softly leaves his house. Chapter 12, The Minister's Vigil. Dimmesdale, having left his house, walks until he reaches the scaffold where Hester Prynne suffered her public humiliation several years ago. He climbs the stairs and imagines that he has a scarlet letter on his chest that all the world can see. While in this state of mind, Dimmesdale screams aloud, and he is immediately terrified that the whole town has heard him. Instead, only Governor Bullingham briefly appears on his balcony before retiring to bed. The relevant Mr. Wilson approaches the scaffold holding a lantern, but only because he is returning from a late-night vigil. He fails to see Dimmesdale, who is standing on the scaffold. Dimmesdale waits a while longer and then bursts out laughing. Much to his surprise, the voice of Pearl answers him. Hester and Pearl are at the scaffold because they have been at Governor Winthrop's deathbed taking measurements for a rope. Dimmesdale invites them to join him on the stand, which they do. All three hold hands and Pearl asks him, "Wilt thou stand here with mother and me, tomorrow noontide?" Dimmesdale answers, "I shall, indeed, stand with thy mother and thee one day, but not tomorrow." Pearl persists in her question, and Dimmesdale answers that, "The daylight of this world shall not see our meeting." At that moment a meteor streaks across the sky, illuminating everything, including Dimmesdale with his hand over his heart and the scarlet letter on Hester's dress. Looking upward, Dimmesdale believes that he sees a giant A in the sky. When he looks down again, Pearl is pointing to Roger Chillingworth, who is watching him from across the street. Chillingworth takes Dimmesdale home. The next day, after a sermon that the narrator describes as the richest and most powerful, Dimmesdale is greeted by the sexton. The sexton hands him his glove, telling him that it was found on the scaffold where Satan must have left it. The man then tells Dimmesdale that last night, a large A was seen in the sky, which was interpreted to mean angel in honor of Governor Winthrop's death. Chapter 13, Another View of Hester. Hester's reputation has changed over the 7 years since she had Pearl. Her devotion to serving the sick and needy has given her access into almost every home, and people now interpret the A as meaning Abel rather than adultery. The narrator goes so far as to state that the scarlet letter had the effect of the cross on the nun's bosom. Hester's appearance has also changed over the years, but for the worse. Rather than having her youthful good looks, she now seems more like a shell of a human being. Her rich and luxuriant hair either has been cut off or remains hidden under a cap. But she might at any moment become a woman again, if there were only the magic touch to effect the transfiguration. Rather than living in passion and feeling, Hester spends most of her time devoted to thought. Indeed, had little Pearl never come to her from the spiritual world, she might have come down to us in history, hand in hand with an E. Hutchinson, as the foundress of a religious sect. Hester resolves to help Dimmesdale by rescuing him from Roger Chillingworth. She has grown strong enough as a woman to see that her previous pact with Chillingworth, in which she promised not to reveal who he really is, was the wrong decision. She therefore decides to meet him, and soon thereafter she finds him in the woods collecting medicinal herbs. Chapter 14, Hester and the Physician. Hester sends Pearl away for a moment and approaches Chillingworth. He tells her that the council thinks she may be allowed to remove the scarlet letter in due time, to which she replies that no earthly power can decide such a thing. Hester then notices the changes that have taken place in Chillingworth over the past 7 years. She sees that he has gone from a soft-spoken scholar to a fierce man. He was a striking evidence of man's faculty of transforming himself into a devil. Hester then tells Chillingworth that she plans to reveal his true identity to Dimmesdale. He is unmoved by this, telling her that nothing he or she does can alter the way things now stand. She pleads with Chillingworth to pardon Dimmesdale for what happened so that he can let go of his revenge. Chillingworth replies, "Let the black flower blossom as it may." Chapter 15, Hester and Pearl. During her mother's conversation with Roger Chillingworth, Pearl has managed to play by herself. Her last act is to make the symbol of the Scarlet Letter out of seaweed and put it on her chest. Her mother asks her if she knows what the letter means, but Pearl only knows it is the letter A. Hester then asks Pearl if she knows why her mother wears the letter. Pearl answers that it is for the same reason that the minister keeps his hand over his heart. Pearl then demands that her mother tell her what the A stands for and why the minister keeps putting his hand over his heart. Hester lies about the letter for the first time ever, saying that she wears it for the gold thread. Chapter 16, A Forest Walk. Hester takes Pearl on a walk into the woods because she has heard that Dimmesdale will be walking along the forest path. She needs to meet him in order to warn him about who Chillingworth really is. While entering the woods, the sunlight spots start to disappear as Hester approaches them. Pearl tells her that she can still catch the sunlight since she does not yet wear a letter. She then runs and catches a beam of sunlight, which disappears as soon as Hester tries to put her hand into it. Pearl asks her mother to tell her a story about the Black Man, who is said to haunt the forest. The Black Man is a myth about the devil, and the story says that he carries a large book and pen with which people write their names in blood. The Black Man then puts his mark on the person. Hester, tired of Pearl asking about the Scarlet Letter, tells her that the letter is the mark of the Black Man, which she received after meeting the Black Man once before. Dimmesdale then starts coming down the forest path, and Pearl sees him. She asks her mother if he covers his heart because he has a mark on his chest as well. She further asks why he does not wear his mark on the outside of his clothing like her mother does.